Welcome back. This is Daybreak, and thanks for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. With us in the studio is the 49th President of the Law Society of Kenya, Council Nelson Harvey, and Senator Eddie Okech, representing Migori County at the Senate. Gentlemen, thanks for staying with us. You had a point, Eddie? Yes, still on public participation.
Yes. So we've talked about the issue of public participation, and I like the fact that you brought the idea of responsibility of parliamentarians. Responsibility of parliamentarians is articulated under Article 73 of the Constitution. That article says that the responsibility bestowed upon state officers is for them to serve the people, not to rule over them. Very well articulated in the Constitution, to the extent that every article that has alluded to public participation, for instance, if you go to Article 69 of the Constitution, it talks clearly about environmental protection and all our environmental management and how public protection should be done in that extent. And the highest responsibility is placed under Article 118 of the Constitution, where Parliament is required to facilitate public participation in all its legislative processes and the laws that they're making. Now, the problem then emanates in the question of what are people requested to participate on in terms of public participation. And most of these instances is where vested interests are exemplified. For instance, if you look at public participation on bills that affect things like CDF, and then you give it to a member of parliament to work on them, or even this finance bill. Remember, one of the reasons why I went to court together with Okiya Mtata is because that we felt like that finance bill did not have proper views of Kenya. It did not give Kenyans the chance to give their views exhaustively. But we remember when I was within the studio here before, I said that vested interest in National Assembly has permeated the idea of ideal process of budget making, where budget making process has become a theater of dividing resources among people who want to benefit from state resources, to the extent that public participation then becomes just a way of sanitizing that process. It's not a genuine process. And this is a problem that, as a country, we must face, because even at a county level, when you look at the budget-making process and any decisions that are around resources...
Before you proceed to the county level, yes, I'll give you time to expound on that.
Yes.
How then can that deficiency be addressed? Because the National Assembly is certainly very critical. And Council Harvey and you are pointing out instances where clearly the House is eroding the enormous institutional power granted to it by the Constitution. Then how can that be resolved? Because the common denominator has been, Senator Okech,
yes,
in all the public participation exercises, Kenyans were dead by majority against some of the proposals and termed them as punitive. But members of parliament rarely and hardly do they take that into consideration.
The reason why I was combining it with the county is because of that solution. And it's a solution whereby we have seen partly the National Assembly and the county governments having their hands in some sort of resources that makes them not do an honest public participation process. And my view is that if you're going to have public participation on laws that have got vested interest, which is actually all of them, right, both in the counties and in the National Assembly, then we must be able to build a law that allows people who are not put in place by those conflicted interests. So, for instance, in our current constitutional order, I think that the public participation laws that I think one day there's one in Senate that is trying to explore how we can frame this, but I think that public participation should be carried mostly by Senate and the county assemblies. And I'm saying about this is an overarching belief, because those two bodies in our country currently do not sit in a place where they affect direct finance bills, as well as affect the executive dispensation of resources. So therefore, there will be less vested interest. There might be some form of vested interest, but by the construction of our constitution, senators will not have vested interest in a bill-making process like the ones that are money bills that affect that are at the the bulk of the bills are coming from the National Assembly.
But isn't it then very important here, Senator, yes, because if you are delinking the National Assembly from that process, especially the handling of money bills,
yes,
because of vested interests, as you said,
yes,
what then happens to their primary role of the three functions that they do play and the other instances which are very pertinent of upholding, safeguarding and defending the Constitution? Because it doesn't necessarily mean that a member of Parliament does represent only one constituency, but sits in a house that also plays other crucial constitutional roles that are very important, including the power to impeach a sitting president.
That's a good question, yeah, because the Article 118 says facilitate. Doesn't say that they coordinate and undertake yeah, that process. And the reason why that is important is because when you read Article 96 of the Constitution, it says that senators are mandated to protect the interests of their counties. That means that in a county like mine, in Migori, I've got 8 sub-counties, or rather eight sub-counties to look at in terms of that protection of that interest. So that where there is interest with regard to public participation, as a senator, I am best placed to be able to protect that interest. So that they facilitate that process, but then the carrying out of that process must be fair, mm-hmm, must be clear from any prejudice, and must be thorough in terms of how it's executed. And that's why I was saying that even governors must be subjected to the same kind of scrutiny and thoroughness in terms of public participation. But the moment they are doing it by themselves, it becomes just a sanitization process rather than a real public participation process.
Yeah, and Councillor Harvey, this act also introduces ETIMS, which is the electronic system through which taxes are issued for records of stocks kept for the purposes of this act, and introduced under Section 23A of this act. And certainly I want to point this out to you because there was an event which happened in Kandara constituency, and avocado farmers from the 7 counties of Mount Kenya region gathered there. That was in March 2024, nearly a year after the bill was passed by the National Assembly and signed into law by President William Ruto. And KRA officials were basically there to give an understanding, to get the people understand, take them through the exercise as to how they can generate the ETIMS. And the lawmakers, the host, to quote him, Chege Njuguna said, "We are telling the government we are not going to pay those avocado taxes. What the government needs to do is subsidizing the avocado, which means helping the farmer, not killing them. We refuse our farmers to be killed. Hiyo maneno tumekataa kabisa." And there was a charged environment to just get you the vision of how environments at the time looked like. These are members of parliament who are there. They voted for this bill when it was in parliament. The people told them at the time, don't, because this is going to affect us. Then they joined the chorus in parliament, vote for it, come to the people, join the public chorus, say no to it. What does then this tell us about the institutional integrity of parliament and our parliamentarians?
I did not know whether this clip I saw in the video was correct, of the president speaking in his national forum saying, come and tour Kenya and see a parliament of baboons in Naivasha. I think if you want to see a parliament of baboons, you don't need to go to Naivasha. You just come across here at CBD and you will see the parliament of baboons. But perhaps we're even denigrating baboons, because baboons have a level of intelligence. And sorry, Eddie, I'm using this figuratively. They have some level of intelligence. But you see, the point that we need to pick is this. ETIMS is proper, is in order. What really is the complaint of the people? The complaint of the people is not that they do not want to pay taxes. Their complaint is this: we do not want our taxes pilfered, stolen, misappropriated. Because if you are an avocado farmer in Kandara, and you're producing avocados sufficiently to sell and earn an income, you wouldn't have a problem paying taxes. But you'll have a problem if the government has not put in place measures to enable you plant, nurture, harvest, and market your avocado optimally so that you grow in your business. Therein lies the problem. And when the members of National Assembly representing these people are confronted They are the typical baboons. They are not able to provide a solution because they know they are not performing their alternate duty to lawmaking, which is oversight of the executive. They are not able to prevent, reduce, and stop the plunder, the theft of public resources. And I can tell you without any fear of contradiction, because the people from Mount Kenya are the biggest businessmen and businesswomen. They wouldn't have a problem paying taxes. Yeah. Their biggest problem, and is the problem of everybody in Kenya, is paying taxes that are being stolen every day. And if this is understood, then the problem of taxation in Kenya will be resolved. Yeah,
because looking at KRA, Senator Eddie, if you look at the Kenya Revenue Authority records, they pointed out that ETIMS had managed to enhance VAT compliance. 280,663 records were onboarded through the ETIMS. Surely it's a working platform. But the failure, is it, Eddie? Do parliamentarians understand this? I mean, before you take the chorus from whoever sits at State House, because the executive certainly wants Parliament to do its business in a certain way, the failure to comprehend and understand the content of the bill as a whole, and that again blowing back on the faces of the members of Parliament for simply agreeing to what the executive wants rather than what the people want, and understanding the bill and translating the same for the people's advantages. Certainly this is an advantage, but it appeared there was no communication from their representatives.
You see, I want to not differ, but I want to expand this conversation a little bit further. Because I think that the role of legislatures in a finance bill process, right, is to look at the pitfalls that then would be able would put Kenyans at risk with regards to all the processes, but it's not to set up the vision. I want us to be very clear on this, because there is definitely a separation of power. So when we look at the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, because the vision of taxation, the process of making that taxation effective, right, to the extent that it doesn't exploit Kenyans, is a role of Parliament to be able to pick that pitfall. But the vision of taxation must lie with the executive, to the extent that if that vision is delusional, parliamentarians should not take a beating for that. For instance, I don't think that the problem of taxation in Kenya is just a problem of pilferage and perhaps wastage of taxation. I think that even the structure of taxation is wrong. Right? Because, and these are the fundamentals that we're looking at the bill. Right? Because if you come into a place whereby you have introduced so many taxes in a country where the placement of capital by the private sector is struggling, what you're going to do is you're going to make it so difficult for the private sector to cultivate the economy, because people are going to run away from that country where there's high taxations and go to places where there's low taxation. So tax moderation in terms of key economies that can be able to then help you build opportunities for job creation by the private sector is key. But that's a vision problem. It's on the executive to be able to see that my tax structure is introducing so many taxes that is making it difficult for the private sector to grow. And up and above that, areas that I should not be able to create my own industry as a government, I'm creating my own industry that makes the private sector to further dive. I gave you an example the other day about the Kenya Advertisement Agency. Right now in the digital era, one of the biggest lucrative areas to be able to employ the young people in creative space and also the media space is advertisement. But the government of the day has created a government advertisement agency that is purely taking all the advertisement job in government, worth 3 billion, right? That should be done by Nation Media Group or Standard Media Group. And then before you realize, these companies are ending up to lay off workers because of the money that they're owed by government. So the tax structure is a big question that we must be able to interrogate in this conversation. But that is an executive vision.
So who oversights that structure then?
It is the assembly. That's why I'm saying that executive vision must be interrogated in Parliament in this process of public participation, and the people must have their views in that decision.
And that was exactly the point I was coming to, and the question, because as I earlier pointed out, there is a reason as to why the framers of our Katiba had placed Parliament in such a very pertinent fulcrum point to balance off parties at either point.
Yes.
It then appears, if you look at the advice by the Parliamentary Budget Office through Dr. Masinde, that talks about investments, the need for foreign investments to come in an taxation regime or tax environment where it's predictable. The American ambassador was here with my colleague Jeff and said there must be consistency in our taxation regime.
Yes.
So still you can't therefore exonerate Parliament from the problems that we have of our taxation.
No, I'm not exonerating Parliament, but I think what I'm saying is that the origination of that vision comes from the executive, and that is a people process, because you know, once you elect a president, right, and he has built his cabinet, then they have their vision on how they want to do their things, and therefore the substance of a finance bill is in the execution of some of the pieces that have been brought forward. So what I'm saying here is that Parliament must be able to question that vision, okay? For instance, if you say that you're going to have, and one of the biggest contention in the finance bill 2023 was the housing levy. If you're going to house the housing levy and it has been enforced, or rather insisted on by the executive, what does Parliament do in that case? The Parliament can be able to choose to expunge that particular provision of that finance bill, that on this we don't agree with this, therefore we reject this bill.
Do you think they can?
I think they can. I think Parliament can.
Doubtful.
Let me take you back to this, because it's very glaring. And
they should, actually, because the reason why they should is the ask of the people. The proposal is a vision proposal, but to the extent it's going to affect the people, it is Parliament to be able to, you know, accept some of the clauses of the bill that have been brought to them and take away some that do not make sense to the people. And that's why I'm saying that they can only do it where the intersection between them and the public, under public participation, is thorough, honest, sincere, and fair. But that is what is lacking, that fairness and sincerity.
Bringing you back to that point, we need to transition to the other topic as well. One final question was, on the 26th of July 2022, Deputy President William Ruto, during the presidential debate, said there needs to be a revision of taxes on petroleum products. The first bill, when he came to power after he was granted that mandate, was to move it from 8% to 16%. That was by 50%.
Yes.
And that was a point of contention for many Kenyans. You increase the price of petroleum products, that impacts logistics, and then the price is pushed on the consumer, who therefore bears that brand. And you think Parliament can say no to that?
I think so. I think Parliament should say no to the same.
And they never did.
And they never did. So
let's transition, gentlemen, to another pertinent point.